Welcome to Eventide Theory. A quiet place for curious minds and resting thoughts. Tonight, we drift into the story of when the universe first took a breath. Back to a time of pure, radiant darkness. Before the first star was born. When all of existence was a single, expanding sigh. Not to find an urgent answer, but to rest within a gentle wonder. If this quiet space brings you calm, you are welcome to stay connected. A gentle subscription ensures this sanctuary remains here for you. A quiet light lets others find their way to this peace. And sharing this calm is a simple, generous gesture. Your support is a soft echo that helps this space endure. But for now, there is nothing to solve. And nowhere you need to go. Simply listen. And let the night carry the rest. Before there were stars. Before there were galaxies. Before there was light moving freely through space. There was a moment that did not arrive with noise, but with possibility. You may imagine it as a breath. Not sudden, not forceful. But the first quiet opening of everything. The universe did not begin as an explosion in empty space. There was no center throwing matter outward. There was no sound echoing through darkness. Instead, space itself began to stretch. Everywhere at once. Like a calm surface slowly unfolding. At first, the universe was incredibly hot and dense. So tightly packed that distance had no meaning yet. Time, as we experience it now, had only just begun to move forward. As space expanded, it cooled. And as it cooled, it softened. Energy slowed enough to become matter. Matter found ways to linger. And lingering made structure possible. This expansion was not violent in the way we often imagine. It was steady. Continuous. Quietly determined. Even now, that same expansion continues. Not rushing. Not slowing dramatically. Just gently carrying everything outward. Every galaxy, every star, every atom in your body is still riding that original motion. You are not separate from the beginning. You are part of its long, unbroken continuation. And as this understanding settles in, it does not need to stay sharp or detailed. It can rest lightly in the background. Like a distant horizon. Like a thought that no longer asks for attention. Because nothing here is urgent. Nothing is demanding to be solved. The universe has already done the difficult work. What remains is simply its slow, patient unfolding. And from this first quiet movement, everything else begins. Before there was light. Before stars or time or distance. There was something far quieter than emptiness. Not nothing, in the way we imagine it. But a state without structure. Without direction. Without the idea of before or after. You may notice how strange that feels. Because the human mind likes edges. Likes beginnings and endings. But the universe did not begin with noise or explosion. Despite the name we've given it. What happened was gentler than that. A subtle expansion. A gradual unfolding. Like space itself taking its very first breath. At that moment, there were no stars racing outward. No galaxies flying apart. There was only energy. Warm and evenly spread. Quietly filling everything that would ever exist. Time itself was being born. Not ticking yet. Just beginning to stretch. Physics behaved differently then. Softened. Simpler. Almost fluid. The laws that now govern motion, gravity, and light had not fully settled into place. Everything was close together. Not crowded. Just unified. And because there was no space yet as we know it, there was no center. No edge. No direction to point toward. Everywhere was everywhere. As the universe expanded, it did not expand into anything. It simply became more. More room. More possibility. More quiet distance between things. You may notice how this idea mirrors rest. The way tension releases without effort. The way a held breath eventually lets go. Nothing rushed. Nothing needed to escape. The universe did not burst outward. It relaxed. And that gentle relaxation is still happening now. Even as you listen. Even as your thoughts slow. There is no need to hold this fully in mind. Like the early universe, your understanding can remain soft. Open. Unforced. Everything is allowed to expand. At its own pace. As the universe took that first quiet breath, something remarkable happened. Not just matter appearing, but space itself beginning to stretch. There was no empty room waiting to be filled. Space was being created as it expanded. Gently, evenly, in all directions at once. You can imagine it like a calm surface. Slowly widening. Not because anything is pushing against it, but because expansion is simply what it does. This stretching didn't happen at a single point. It happened everywhere. Every place was the center. And every direction led outward. As space expanded, it cooled. Just as warm air spreads and softens. The early universe began to settle. Energy slowed into matter. Matter organized into the simplest particles. Then into atoms. Quietly, without urgency. Hydrogen formed first. The lightest element. Simple and patient. Helium followed. Slightly heavier. Still gentle. Still calm. These atoms drifted through a growing universe. Carried by expansion. Moving apart. Yet connected by the same origin. There was no sound. No light as we know it yet. Just motion so smooth it would feel like stillness. Time itself was unfolding at a steady pace. One moment flowing into the next. Without memory. Without anticipation. And as the universe continued to expand, it became a place where structure could eventually emerge. Slowly. Much later. Without ever rushing. You may notice how this idea feels less like an explosion. And more like a long exhale. A release. A soft opening. The universe wasn't thrown into being. It was allowed to become. And that gentle expansion. That quiet stretching of space. Is still happening now. Even as you rest. Even as you listen. The universe continues its calm unfolding. Nothing sudden. Nothing sharp. Just steady change. Moving forward. One moment at a time. As the universe continued to cool, something subtle but important began to happen. Space itself started to stretch. Not suddenly. Not violently. But slowly, and then steadily. The universe was no longer just hot and dense. It was becoming wide. This stretching is still happening today. Every second. The space between galaxies grows just a little larger. Not because galaxies are rushing away. but because the fabric beneath them is gently expanding. Imagine tiny points drawn on a soft surface. And that surface slowly relaxing outward. The points don't move on their own. Yet the distance between them increases. This is how the universe grows. There is no edge pushing outward. No center pulling things apart. Expansion happens everywhere. All at once. Quietly. In those early moments, expansion helped shape everything that followed. As space stretched, energy thinned, temperatures dropped, movement slowed. This slowing was essential. Without it, matter would never have had time to settle. Structure would never have formed. Stars would never have found their rhythm. Expansion created patience. It gave the universe room to breathe. Over long spans of time. Tiny differences in density became important. Some regions were just a little heavier. Just a little more crowded. Gravity noticed. Very gently. It began to gather. Not into sharp forms. But into soft swirls of influence. Matter responded slowly. Drifting toward these denser places. Nothing hurried. The universe had no schedule. As space continued to stretch, gravity quietly worked in the opposite direction. Drawing matter together where it could. This balance between expansion and gathering is still unfolding. It is why galaxies exist. And also why they remain far apart. It is why the universe feels both connected and spacious. You can think of it as a slow conversation. Space saying, there is room. Gravity replying, there is belonging. Neither wins. Neither rushes. They simply continue. And as this rhythm settled into place, the universe became calm enough for its first long-lasting structures to emerge. That quiet emergence of matter finding shape and direction is where the next chapter begins. After the universe had taken its first breath. After space had stretched and cooled. After light had begun its long journey outward. Something gentle started to happen. Matter began to notice itself. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But slowly, patiently. As gravity whispered instead of shouted. Tiny particles drifted through the cooling universe. Hydrogen atoms, mostly. A little helium. Nothing heavy. Nothing complex. At first, everything was spread thin. Like fog across an endless field. But gravity has a quiet preference. Where there was just a little more matter than elsewhere. Gravity leaned in slightly. And where it leaned, more matter followed. Over millions of years. These faint gatherings became clouds. And those clouds became denser. And in their centers, pressure slowly grew. No urgency. No rush. Just accumulation. Eventually, in some of these clouds, the pressure became enough to spark something new. Not an explosion. Not a burst. But ignition. The first stars were born. They did not resemble the stars we see today. They were enormous. Short-lived. And brilliant. They burned hot and fast. Using up their fuel quickly. And when they reached the end of their lives, they returned their material to space. But this return was not an ending. It was a gift. Inside those early stars, simple elements were transformed. Hydrogen became helium. Helium became heavier elements. carbon, oxygen, nitrogen. The building blocks of complexity. When those stars faded, they scattered these elements outward, enriching the universe. And from that enriched material, new stars formed. Slower ones. Calmer ones. Stars that could shine steadily for billions of years. Stars like the one warming Earth right now. This cycle repeated again and again. Clouds gathering. Stars forming. Stars releasing their contents back into space. Nothing wasted. Nothing hurried. Over time, matter learned patterns. Gravity sculpted structure. Galaxies emerged. Not suddenly, but as natural outcomes of patience. Vast spirals of stars, turning quietly through space. Each one a record of countless calm processes layered over time. As this understanding settles, there is no need to hold on to every detail. You may simply notice how the universe prefers cooperation over force, and time over speed. Everything that feels solid now began as something diffuse, given room to gather. And just ahead, we'll drift toward the calm heart of a galaxy itself, where motion slows, and quiet power rests at the center. As the universe continued to expand, something subtle began to change. The intense heat that once filled everything, everywhere, slowly started to ease. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. But gently, as space stretched and widened. Energy spread out. Temperatures lowered. And for the first time, the universe was no longer only fire and motion. This cooling allowed simple particles to slow down just enough to recognize one another. Protons and electrons, drifting through the expanding cosmos, began to settle into stable partnerships. Hydrogen formed first. Simple, light, and abundant. Helium followed soon after. Still uncomplicated. Still calm. With these early atoms, the universe entered a quieter phase of its life. Light, which had once been trapped by the constant collisions of charged particles, was finally free to travel long distances. Photons moved smoothly through space, no longer bouncing endlessly. This ancient light still exists today. It fills the universe softly, in every direction. Not bright. Not loud. Just present. Scientists call it the cosmic background glow, but you can think of it as the universe's oldest memory, still drifting calmly through space. During this era, there were no stars yet. No galaxies. No planets. Only vast stretches of cooling gas, slowly moving apart, resting in the gentle expansion of space itself. Gravity was there, quietly at work, but in no hurry. Tiny differences in density, almost imperceptible, were enough to guide the future. Slightly thicker regions would, over immense time, begin to gather more material. But for now, the universe remained simple. Dark. Cooling. Uncomplicated. A long pause followed. A cosmic quiet period, lasting millions of years, where very little seemed to happen at all. And yet, everything necessary for the next chapter was already in place. There was no rush. The universe had learned how to wait. As the universe continued to expand, it began to cool, slowly and patiently. In those early ages, space was still thick with energy, light itself struggled to move freely. Photons bounced endlessly, trapped in a glowing fog of charged particles. Nothing rushed, nothing collapsed, everything simply spread outward, following the gentle logic of expansion. Then, after hundreds of thousands of years, something subtle happened. The universe cooled just enough for electrons to settle into stable orbits around nuclei. Atoms formed, quietly, without drama. For the first time, light was able to travel freely through space. That ancient light still exists today, stretched thin by expansion, whispering to us as the cosmic microwave background. This moment did not arrive with fireworks. It arrived with clarity. Space became transparent. The universe could finally see itself. From there, gravity took its time. Slight differences in density, places where matter was just a little thicker, began to pull gently on their surroundings. Over millions of years, those soft imbalances grew. Clouds of gas gathered. Filaments formed. Vast regions of space began organizing themselves without instruction. The first stars ignited not as explosions, but as steady awakenings. Hydrogen collapsed inward, warmed, and began to glow. Light returned to the universe in points rather than haze. Galaxies slowly assembled, not as collisions, but as gatherings, stars finding rhythm together, bound by gravity's quiet patience. Nothing in this era was hurried. Stars lived long lives. Some burned steadily for billions of years. Others lived briefly, enriching space with heavier elements when they faded. Each generation prepared the universe for the next, without intention, without urgency. This is the rhythm that followed the universe's first breath. Expansion without panic. Change without force. Structure without command. Even now, the universe continues this same motion. Space still stretches. Galaxies still drift apart. Stars still rise and fade. The conditions that shaped everything around you are not gone, they are ongoing. And as this understanding settles, it doesn't demand attention. It simply rests there, like a distant current. Moving quietly beneath everything you know. As the story of the universe continues to widen, something subtle begins to happen. The grand forces we've been describing. Expansion, cooling, gravity, time. They no longer feel dramatic. They begin to feel familiar. Because these same forces are still at work right now. The universe is still expanding, quietly, patiently. Space is still stretching between galaxies, at a pace so gentle it cannot be felt. Time is still moving forward, not in leaps, but in steady breaths. Every atom in your body was shaped by this long unfolding. Not suddenly. Not urgently. But gradually, across billions of years. The calcium in your bones. The iron in your blood. The oxygen you breathe. All of it formed inside ancient stars that lived and faded long before Earth existed. Those stars did not rush. They burned slowly, steadily, doing exactly what physics allowed them to do. And when their work was finished, their materials drifted outward. Cooling. Settling. Becoming part of something new. This is how the universe builds. Not through effort. But through continuity. One quiet process giving rise to the next. Nothing here is forced. Nothing is hurried. Even change, on the largest scale imaginable, happens slowly enough to feel like stillness. And as you rest here, listening, your own body is participating in this same rhythm. Cells repairing. Memories softening. Systems restoring balance. All guided by patterns that began when the universe first learned how to expand. And then never stopped. There is no need to follow every detail now. The ideas can loosen. They can blur gently at the edges. Like distant starlight. Still present. Even when you stop looking directly at it, the universe continues its motion, quietly. And you are allowed to rest within it. And as all of this begins to settle, there is no need to hold the details anymore. The numbers can loosen. The images can soften. The explanations can gently drift. What remains is not information, but a feeling. A sense that the universe began. Not with urgency, but with openness. That even in its earliest moments, there was space for things to unfold slowly. The first light did not rush. It expanded. Quietly. Evenly. Time itself learned how to move in those moments. Stretching calmly. Allowing complexity to arrive when it was ready. And in a way, that same patience continues now. Stars form without effort. Galaxies turn without noise. Distances grow. Not because they are pushed, but because space itself makes room. You are part of that same expansion. Not as something separate, but as a continuation. The atoms that make up your body once passed through ancient stars. And before that, through the earliest warmth of the universe itself. Nothing about you is rushed. Nothing about you is late. You are here. Because the universe has always allowed things to take their time. As this understanding settles, it doesn't need to stay sharp. It can blur gently. Like a thought losing its edges. Like light fading into distance. There is no conclusion required. No final point to reach. Just a quiet sense of belonging. Within something vast. Patient. And endlessly calm. And as the reflection slowly dissolves, there is nothing left to do. Nothing left to track. Only the steady feeling that everything continues. Without hurry. Thank you for spending this quiet time here. If these gentle explorations bring you comfort, you're always welcome to return. Until then, rest easily. And let the night carry you.